And welcome back to Cheyenne, Wyoming Urban Gardener. This is Debbie, and part 2 of the update on the garden and to see what all is going on, all of the watermelons and cantaloupes and tomatoes and all of that are setting, and the gallons of beans that I'm starting to pick, and all of the good things going on in the garden and some of the fall planting that we're getting into. So we were left off with here in the tomato area, and we do have an Armenian cucumber in here. We actually have 6 of them, and this one in particular right here is running and is starting to actually go up into the tomato. So I'm gonna have to get in there and pull that guy out of there as far as like away from the tomato plant and see if I can get it going the other direction and see if we get some Armenian cucumbers this year, because they are one of my favorites. They're just super huge. You can do a lot with them, and I love the Armenian cucumbers. So hopefully we'll get some out of that guy. Sorry about that, motorcycle going by. And like I said, we got 6 plants in there. There's another one right behind it that is starting to do some running as well. We still have about 45 days to grow or so, and hopefully we'll have enough time for them to put some cucumbers on and get something out of that. And also, I didn't update you on my grandson's little garden bags, but he is getting peppers now. And I did transplant him a borage in here so that way it'll bloom. But he does have a little pepper right there. And I think it's going to be some sort of a snack pepper variety, but it's getting pretty big. On his little plant that has basically two branches, and is really starting to fill out in leaves and things from what it was. So I'm hoping it'll get some more peppers in here, but it's doing pretty well. His mustard, which was in a mixture of sweet mesclun, is going to seed, so we're going to have to get that pulled out of here so his other lettuce that's in there can actually do something. His lemon basil is knocking it out of the park. Look how much lemon basil that he has. I'm going to have to thin some out of here and maybe give some away, because they are just super huge. And a lot of them. We didn't thin them out. We should have. His celosia is doing really well. This is the one that looks like a brain, as my daughter says. So his celosia is doing very well. We're looking forward to seeing it bloom. And his little, I don't know if this is a broccoli or cauliflower. I planted in one of each, and I think this might be the cauliflower. It's doing really well, so we'll see if he actually gets ahead on it. And he has some ripe tomatoes. Look at that on his little yellow pear tomato. And it's still blooming and still producing. It's not as tall as mine. Of course, it was in the really bad soil, but it is blooming and doing some stuff and got a ripe tomato on it. So he's going to be looking forward to that. His lettuce is just about done. So I think we'll go ahead and get that pulled and get him some more lettuce planted in here beside of his little borage plant, which will be huge soon. And he's got a few little radishes in here, so we'll see if he gets some radishes. But anyway, back to the main garden. We didn't have a whole lot of luck this year with the red curry on behind the beans, and I'm not sure why, because the beans actually fix nitrogen in the soil, and they've been fertilized and things like that, but unfortunately it just looks like they're not going to do super well this year. They'll still bloom, they will still produce, and they've got runners on them, but they're not super huge like the ones that are a little bit younger in another part of the main garden that I'll show you in just a moment. But you can see the size of these, and we do have a runner, and it's blooming, and we'll have some red curry on it. In fact, I think it has one on the end, but they're just not as huge as these red curry over here. And these red curry are located just a few rows away from them across the peas. The peas are here on the trellises, and we've had loads and loads of peas, by the way. I've picked about a gallon, and we've got more coming on. But anyway, these red curry are doing so much better than those over there. They have got runners on them like crazy. I'm still trying to keep them in the garden. I've been laying them back on themselves, all kinds of stuff, but there's runners going that way, runner going that way, and a runner out here in the front, and one going over here. So these guys are doing amazing, and they've got little red curry on them all over the place. So they are definitely doing a lot better than the red curry over in the other section. And then we have our yellow straight neck squash here that have just filled out like crazy in the last few days. And we have squash. So you're down here underneath the plants right now where you can see in. I do keep some of the leaves on the bottoms trimmed back so they get good airflow. And you can see the yellow squash that are just hanging in here all over the place. So we've got yellow straight neck squash that are coming on in the next couple of days. I do like to have mine a little bit bigger than most people do because I like more of a product, more bang for your buck. And they're still tender and perfectly able to be used. And we also have loads of zinnias that are getting ready to bloom in here. Hundreds of zinnias and hundreds of calendula. Some that are blooming like crazy already. And we've got more that are slightly behind, but will not take long to pick up and be the size of the other ones. So we've got loads of that going on. You can see all the bloom heads looking fantastic. And our peppers, we've got peppers in here just about everywhere now. You can see a pepper there and another one over here that's a much larger, and another one over there, all the way out through there. And even the ones that I started from seed that were slower and don't know really remember which ones are which, they are starting to bloom and produce as well, and are kind of on the verge of getting taken over by the red curry squash. We have zucchini in here. The zucchinis are across from the peppers, just a short distance from the red curries. And we have zucchini in here that are huge already. You can see one. I think you can see it right in there. We got another one on the other side that's just about as big. And then some of the ones in behind were the ones that were planted a little bit later to fill in for ones that didn't come up, and they are already on the verge of blooming and producing themselves. In this one up front was one that was transplanted, and it's just right up there ready to put on blooms and squash as well. And we've got beets planted in between each of the peppers, and they are doing fantastic as well. You can see those in there. And our dill, we've got some dill planted between the peppers, also doing really well. And surprisingly enough, I can still get into the garden. I can still weed, which is something that I did just last night and a couple of days ago. So we've got in there and cleaned all of that out. And so we're still doing really well on those. I just don't know. Peppers may be kind of taken over by squash, but we do not eat as many peppers as we do squash anyway. But we'll still get peppers. Unfortunately, my spinach went to seed. It bolted every single time I've planted this year. So we haven't gotten really a whole lot of spinach, and I think I'm going to switch to the Malabar spinach next season, see if I can get my hands on some seeds, and we'll get that started and see how that does in this area. But I'll plant some more spinach here probably today, later, and or tomorrow, and we'll get that up and going. Our lettuce that we planted in here is getting eaten by the dang birds. We've got birds that we feed, and the birds have gotten into the garden and have eaten the lettuce. I caught them doing it earlier. They're feeding their babies all of the lettuce that's over here. They're not touching it anywhere else, just in this section, and some of the lettuce over there. So I don't know what I'm going to do on that. I may have to actually put some netting on this to keep them from getting into the lettuce again. I may have to end up replanting some of that lettuce. Really is a bummer. And the birds are getting fed, so they shouldn't be over here in the garden, but they are. And if I stop feeding them, they're just going to be in the garden worse. So I'm in a catch-22 situation. Loads of birds here, and that kind of happens if you don't feed them. So we're having to feed them. Our sunflowers are doing really well. We've got sunflowers in here, but of course they're not as big as the ones that I had last season, which were more than 10 feet on a lot of them. But they're going to be sunflowers. They're going to bloom, and that's good because they are squirrel deterrents. Basically, the squirrels get up there and eat the seeds and the birds, so they stay out of the main part of the garden. cabbages are doing really well. We got in here and trimmed a lot of the leaves out of the bottom. Of course, we still have some that are straggling behind, and have been for most of the season. I'm not real sure they're going to do anything, but we do have plenty that will. We've got a head of cabbage right here. You can see that one there. And then we've got a head of cabbage back there and a few more all through there. And then we've got our red cabbage. They're actually starting to head up now. You can see them heading up. So finally, yay, we might have some red cabbage. And then I did replant some more cabbage in there, and unfortunately the birds are picking the leaves off. So now I know what was possibly cutting the leaves off was the birds. So I don't know, I may have to set up some owls or streamers or tins or something to keep them out of the garden. So I'm probably going to do that this evening, get out here and string up some tins and just keep them out of the garden. Celery still doing fantastic. We've got heads of celery that we could probably just about go ahead and harvest, but we've been just pulling a stalk here and a stalk there to eat, and it is the most delicious celery. So much flavor. But we got 15 heads in here all along this row, and in the back past the cabbage. Still have lettuce back there behind all of this that is still doing wonderfully as well, and we do still eat off of that. And surprisingly enough, the birds are not bothering any of the other lettuces. Like I said, it was just those 2 batches, so we still have lettuce back there that's just fine, that they just are not getting into. Just these 2. Yukon Gold potatoes, I have not dug them yet because we still have some straggling ones that are blooming that were a little bit behind the others. So once those finish blooming, and then a few more weeks past that, when they start to kind of die back and things, then we'll think about going ahead and checking to see if we've got some nice potatoes in there and get those dug. Our clearanced out knockout roses still doing fantastic. Lots more blooms on those. They're really starting to pick up in growth and in blooms. And I still need to research if we can use the rose hips on those, because we have loads of rose hips on both of these roses. We've got one rose here and then another one out there, and they all both have rose hips on them. So we'll see if they can use those. Of course, our fuchsia is still blooming like crazy, and really starting to bush up now, which is something that I wanted it to do. So that is looking great. We've got lavender in here that's really starting to mature out, which is fantastic. Our thyme is filled the containers completely, and we have our compact basil is now really starting to take off. I got in here and thinned a lot of it out and just left some in here, and I'll still probably thin some more, just because even though it's compact basil, it still will get big enough that it'll bump into each other, so we don't want it to smother each other out. And we still have blooming and seeding on our old basil that we had in the fuchsia pot back in the winter time, and we will collect the seeds on those. And our oregano is really starting to fill out and just get massive as well. And we've got all of these delicata squash through here that look like to me they're going to be bush, but they may actually run. I'm not sure just yet. You can get either way with a delicata squash. It's either going to be bush or it's going to have runners on it. And I don't know yet, but the plants are beautiful. They are kind of a marbled, variegated plant, unlike the other squash plants, so really pretty. We've got runners on our beans that we had along the fence that were really getting bitten by ants, but now they've seemed to stop that, and they've really started picking up on growth and putting runners on and starting to climb the fence. And again, these are rattlesnake pole beans and Kentucky Wonders, so we should get some really massive beans from these when they start. I mean, they're blooming right now, so we'll have beans shortly. I transplanted a couple of lavender plants into these pots. These had the bad soil in them, and I went in and put in some of my regular soil and mixed it in together, and then transplanted a couple of lavender from my bigger pot in here, and they seem to be doing really well. There's 2 different varieties of lavender here. This is a true lavender, and then this one I think is the lady lavender, or lavender lady. So it's a lot different leaf pattern, looks completely different, so we're going to see what happens with that one. I planted some more tarragon seed today in this container because we did have one come up, but then it died off. So I amended the soil. This was the bad soil. Amended it, put some fresh soil in here, and planted some more seeds. So we'll see if those come up. All of our sunflowers along the fence are doing amazing. We've got marigolds in here as well, and some zinnias, and they are just really starting to put on a lot of size, and it's shaded over here, so they're a little bit slower, but definitely are going to bloom. You can see some bloom heads starting in there. And our marigolds are right there. They're still small, but they'll bloom before the season's out. We planted some opal basil in here, dark opal basil. Just went in here and amended the soil a little bit. This was bad soil. So I amended it and went ahead and put in some dark opal seeds, basil, and we'll see if those come up and see if it did any better for that soil. Our mints are still doing amazing. And all of our other plants still doing fantastic. We did get our marjoram that was in the 9 container seed starter. We got that one transplanted out and into this pot. So we got 2 plants of marjoram out of that. And they're both doing amazing. Just need to keep them from getting a lot of dirt on them because that can sometimes kill them out. And also keep the pumpkins out of here because we have pumpkins right behind them. So I think I need to move this pot because we will end up having runners everywhere in that. So let's move this guy over to here. So sorry about that. You guys are bouncing around. Turnips are still doing great. Our dinosaur kale is really starting to put on now. Getting some size on it, and I'm not sure. We've got some leaves that are being attacked, so it may be birds as well, but they haven't touched the beets. So something about the beets they don't like. But anyway, the kale is starting to get bigger, so I think we'll be okay on that. I'm just going to get something out here to deter the birds from attacking a lot of the stuff. So all we'll need out here is some streamers or some pans, something. But beets are looking amazing. We're starting to get some heads on the beets now, especially the bigger ones. Leaves are looking a lot more healthy. And we've got a couple of sunflowers coming up here and there. I'm just leaving them at this point because it's just so late. I don't really think they're going to do a whole lot anyway. But beets looking amazing. Rutabaga is really starting to get heads on them. They're getting super huge now. And all of our pumpkins are blooming. Well, you can see where all the birds have been. They're getting pumpkins on them. They're looking amazing. And we've got, again, 3 different varieties of pumpkins in here and the Boston marrow. Boston marrow looks like it's going to be putting on squash at any point because it has ran. Its runners actually went up underneath all of the pumpkins. So I'm going to be having an interesting time hunting for all of these pumpkins when it comes time to harvest them. So they just seem to be all wanting to run into each other. But it is quite a patch of pumpkins at this point. I'm not sure how big the runners are because they're all underneath everything. Flowers are still blooming like crazy. These are all the flowers that we started ourselves. And they are just looking beautiful. And then the coleus that I got as the distressed plant is still just blooming and looking amazing. And again, it's got the red and the purpley pink fuchsia color. Just looking great. All of our flowers out there. You can see that is my favorite pansies, or that peach color. Just brilliant. And our carrots are actually doing really well now. Starting to definitely fill out. We did plant some more seeds in there to fill it on out, but really starting to look good. And then our daikon radishes are looking amazing as well. We did plant some more daikon radish seeds to take the place of some of the carrots that didn't come up. And we got more carrots planted in here to fill out the rest of the carrots here. And our lettuce is still doing really well. This is the ones that are starting to get picked at by the birds, but I think I might have scared the birds enough today. And then plus I'm going to put some pans in here that'll keep them out. Works really well if you put pans hanging by a string and they just make some noise And we get a lot of wind in Wyoming, so there's a lot of noise that'll keep them out of here. So, all of our containers still doing amazing. Again, we've got over 100 containers that we grow out of, and we've got garden sage and rosemary and watermelons and cantaloupes and all kinds of stuff that we grow in containers. Lemon balm looking amazing. And I already harvested the chives again. We have garlic chives and the common variety of chives, and I harvested those for the 4th time this season. And we have another pot that we started. These are the old chives that I had in the garden, transplanted them out and put them in here. They're 7 years old now and still just going like crazy. And this container as well is new and new seeds. We got more garlic chives in here than common chives, so you can see those are a lot bigger. So we got that, and we did transplant some more of the chives out of that section that was left remaining, and we put them over here as well in some areas, and they have already started to put on some new growth. You can see that right there. These are all of the roots that I pulled out of the main garden and put in here, and they're already going. So very good chives here finally, and we'll show you the north section. And we did plant some more, of course, Russian kale through here, doing great. Starting to get some size on it. Our Swiss chard is being attacked by the birds over in this section. They haven't touched this yet, but they've been over there and have started eating the leaves there. And then we've got radishes that we just planted here yesterday, all in here. So we've got radishes all through this section. We've got royal plum radishes, which are purple, crimson giants, and then we have another variety of radishes in here that I cannot remember at this point. But loads of radishes through here. And then we have our, I believe these are acorn squash, but they could be butternut squash. But we've got 5 of those, and they are looking fantastic and definitely starting to put on some size here. And now we're going into the north section, which has gotten kind of weedy. We've had a lot of rain here in the last few days, which is good, but keeps me from having to water the garden. But I think I'm actually going to have to top off watering in the garden this evening because we didn't get enough rain today. But anyway, lilies we still have blooming. Got a white one. We've got these are supposed to be black, but again, we've had another year of really deep red. So it may be a little bit before we actually get them going to black. It can take a couple of seasons before they do that, and these have only been in this a 2nd season. Our Guido Cassaman squash over here is getting bigger. I got to get a thistle out of here, but is getting bigger and got a runner on it. And we've got our French pie pumpkins over here that was also from Sandy at Suburban Homesteader, Wyoming / Arizona. And they are starting to get runners. There and there. We've got some more sunflowers planted over here. That'll be a little bit behind the other ones, but they're a short variety, so they bloom pretty soon. So I'm not sure they'll be that far behind the other ones. And we've got our acorn squash here. We've got one there, and then one over here. Those are looking like they're getting ready to bloom. So we may have acorn squash pretty soon. And our strawberry bed over here, which is the converted kiddie pool, we are still getting strawberries out of here like crazy. We've got runners on the strawberries that have rooted, and they are producing strawberries now. So that all happened in one season, which is kind of wild because that normally doesn't happen so fast with the runners rooting, but they did, and we've had strawberries out of them. And now the runners are trying to go outside, and I think this time I'll just let them do it. And we got some dill in here, which is doing great, and I got to get in here and weed because we got more weeds coming in. So I'll need to pull the cage off and weed those. And frankly, what's interesting is that this kiddie pool gets birds that attack it and squirrels that attack it if I leave the cage off. But the other converted kiddie pool on the other side of the house, nothing bothers it at all. So kind of crazy. So anyway, that is the garden tour, the update, and let me show you what we've been doing for fall planting. All right, now we're inside. I'm going to show you what we've been doing for our fall planting for our herbs. What we've done is we just went and got that same 9-pot container, and we just planted some fennel in here. I'm not sure if the fennel will actually do anything or if we'll just have the fronds from it. Either way, they can be used as a seasoning for dishes. And we've got some summer savory that I started again. We have not had any luck on summer savory this year. So I'm trying to get the seeds started. We're going to try it again and see if we can bring it inside for the winter. Some more dark opal basil because it has a, I've noticed a less of a coming to fruition than some of the other basil with the dark opal basil. So we planted some more. I've noticed that it likes shade a little bit better than the regular basil. So we are going to go ahead and try that, bring it inside for the winter. We've started some pansies. These are giant pansies. Of course, they are cold hardy, so we will have them, once they come up, we'll have them transplanted out into pots and things like that for the winter, and they'll overwinter, and we'll see them again in the spring. And they may even bloom some of the winter. It just depends on how cold it gets. We got some regular basil started. This is just a sweet basil variety, so we've got that started as well. Some English lavender, just because to have a different variety of lavender. We've got true lavender and we've got lavender lady, but we did not have any English lavender that made it this season. And sorry about the dirt under my nails. I've been out there playing in the dirt. More tarragon here, and that's what we have. That'll be for the fall herbs. There will be more herbs that we will plant. My dogs are playing in the background, so you can hear that. They sound like they're going to kill each other, but they're actually playing. And one of my dogs doesn't want the other ones to run in front of her because she wants to take a nap. And she's been napping all day. She's 12 years old. She gets that privilege. So anyway, that is the fall planting for this season. We are started to dry a lot of herbs. Let me show you those. We're also saving some of the pepper seeds from some peppers that we were getting. These are the Big Jim pepper seeds. And then we had a different pepper variety that we're not even sure what the name of it is, but we enjoyed it, so we went ahead and saved some seeds from that. And then we have some seeds that we're saving from Carabay pepper, and that is this one. And this one is kind of a strange pepper because it can be on the Scoville unit of either tasting like basically a green bell pepper all the way up to tasting like a hot jalapeno. So depending on when you harvest it is how hot that it's going to be. So we're going to save some of those because we did enjoy that pepper. And I used it to do stuffed peppers the other day. We are drying some chives, and you can see that I just dry them like this, just either flat in a container, or I will put them in a plastic container and just come in and swish them around every day just so they dry evenly and they're nice and green. And we just go ahead and bag them up and then save them. But you can see they're doing wonderful, and we got a little bit of sunlight coming in from the window here, and that helps with the drying process on this particular area. But we just come in here and move these around, and they dry evenly. We've got some parsley that we're drying as well right here, and kind of the same thing with that. Some basil here that we're drying, and some mint right here, and we have some dill here, and we're saving some more seeds that we liked from a Picasso melon that we picked up at the store. So we're saving that, and we're saving some Gerbera daisy seeds as well. So got all of that going on. There will be much more very, very shortly that will be drying and saving. We've also got some shallots that were out in the garden shed that are drying, and we'll be braiding those and hanging those. And then we'll be doing some leather breeches that I used to do back in Tennessee. That is basically taking green beans, stringing them up, hanging them up, and letting those dry. It makes leather breeches. So we'll go through that process as well. So like, subscribe, hit the notification bell for notices on new videos as they come out. And we shall see you in the next one.